Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us here for the episode 1 of the Trucker Strong Business Talk, where we're going to be bringing on various different people throughout the year, every week, to talk about different ways to help independent owner operators and small carriers increase their business focus. We're first want to shout out and say thanks to FreightWeb for sponsoring this. They've got a great product they're bringing to market, which is a carrier optimization tool, bringing pricing that is independent of any brokers out there. So you're going to get a more honest insight into pricing, plus other tools to help you optimize and focus on building the best lanes and getting into the best market. So thanks to FreightWeb for doing that. And we'll be sure to check out, as far as in the description, a link to their website, so you can follow what's coming up and as they're releasing their products. So anybody who's been around here for a little while and is anywhere in social media knows that there's a lot of angst out there. I like to say that some of these guys, these brokers are living in their head rent free right now. They're just so focused on that. And what we want to try to do is we want to try to change this up a little bit. We want to get people to start focusing on ways that they can build their business. Focusing on what you can't control is not going to help you there. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk with somebody I've known for years, used to work with us, a friend of ours, Craig Leonard with Logistics ATB. Craig was an owner operator. He was leased on to carry. He booked his own freight. He's trained probably more drivers and mentored more drivers with him and his wife Ann over the years than anybody else we've worked with. So we've always been very appreciative of that. But he has a great insight, and I'm surprised he still talks to us, because about a year ago we kind of convinced them to come off the road and get into helping small carriers get started and helping them find freight and be as profitable as possible. So now they've sold their truck and they're work from home, staying around their family, which always brought them back to Chattanooga. So let's get started. Let's bring Craig in there. Hey, how are you doing, Craig?
I'm good, Bill. Thanks.
Now, lots of stories from you guys. Actually, I've got to say this is there are actually people, the things that you and Ann did while you're out there on the road. There were, I would say, who probably had more people not believe what you were saying or what was happening out there than a lot of that. It was kind of amazing. Yeah. But there was some really cool things you guys did. And I'll tell you, there's things like, your son who's playing college football played in a bowl game, and you were able to actually, as a driver, go and see
a number of bowl games. And it was really, one of the reasons we got into trucking, I was very dissatisfied with what I was doing. But it started as a joke. I made a joke to my wife, and she said, if we take the dogs, and I thought she was kidding. And she really meant, if we could take the dogs, I'd do it. So, but we used it as a vehicle, literally, to move our butts from family event to family event to party to vacation to weddings, whatever. And it was an incredible lifestyle for us. We were offered dedicated lanes constantly, which most truckers, that's what they're looking for. And that was the last thing in the world we wanted. We actually ran a dedicated lane for Ford, basically from Laredo up to Wayne, Michigan, for about 3.5 months. And the money was awesome and the consistency was great, but it wasn't at all what we wanted. We were dying on the vine. We were able to fall with my son, living in Chattanooga. My son played for Colorado State, and we went to a bunch of football games. We'd book a load. I'd go to Seattle, and they were playing in Boise, and we booked a load to Seattle, and actually, we were a team. So we'd book a solo load so we could stop for a day or two en route, until we'd stop, watch the game, get you back in the truck, and off we went. And it was awesome. Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's the things you guys did. One of the things that you taught me, and I wish when I learned this, I was still on the road, but you used to use Google and the Earth to take a look at an area you were going into to see where you could park a truck, and then you grab an Uber or taxi and go do things. And I got to say that, here in Chattanooga, that there's that pilot that's just in Georgia across the border there, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a little piddly pilot. I used to have an account. I was going back and forth between Illinois and here, and it was like this just didn't have a place to park. Now, had I had Google Maps, I would have known a half a mile down the road was a massive truck stop that nobody knew about, and there's plenty of parking there. So there's lots of things I learned from that. Now, the best, and I guess, and I don't know, you can tell me if this isn't the one that stands out, but is the Tiger King.
The Tiger King, yeah. And when we met Joe Exotic, and we didn't call him the Tiger King. I called him Joe Exotic. It felt weird saying exotic, but that's how he introduced himself. Yeah, we actually ran a load for the Tiger. Actually, if you've watched we met most of the people in that docudrama. I'm not sure what it is, but I mean, Joe and John, one of his husbands, It was an unbelievable experience, to be honest. And it's crazy and weird. And we knew he was weird when we met him, but he's just a really engaging, charismatic guy, and you just want to like him. But yeah, we went to Oklahoma, picked up his trailer, which was a wreck, had to do a lot of work on it, and went up to the bar.
I was stressed. I'll tell you, as an owner of a carrier that's watching the safety scores, that trailer stressed the hell out of me. Oh yeah,
it was pretty scary, to be honest. But yeah, so we went up to Bar Harbor, Maine. This is actually a picture of us. Yeah, I'm sharing. But we were feeding tigers. That's actually in Joe's house. You're not getting it? You're not seeing it? No,
yeah.
I shared it. I don't know why. That's weird. Let me click to make sure to see it again.
Here we go. Now it's popping up.
There we go. Yeah, so that was in Joe's house, actually playing with and feeding baby tigers. So it was a crazy experience. We actually took one of the zookeepers with us in the truck. It was just weird, but fun. Honestly, it was a week we'll never forget. And we picked up 5 tigers, a lion, a bobcat, 6 wolves, and a raccoon from a wild animal park that had gone bankrupt up in Bar Harbor. And Doc, the guy you see with the ponytail on there, he's the guy who paid for all this to happen. So it was just quite interesting. And of course, we knew nothing about these people before or after, although we were invited to the wedding, which was interesting. We didn't go.
Oh, really? Interesting. Now this was like, you guys were like stealing in the middle of the night type of thing, because the other
Carol Hastings,
person in the would have approved it, and they were trying to make sure that they got this from her.
We couldn't tell anybody what we were doing, or when we got up to Bar Harbor, we couldn't tell anybody why we were there, because if it had gotten back, and Joe talked about this the whole time we were with them, if Carol Baskins found out, she'd have a crew there to shut it down, to keep these animals. They'd actually want to put them down. So we don't, the politics of it and everything, we never got involved in. We were just, hauling live animals. It was weird at the truck stops when you pulled in for fuel, though, with the tigers and lions roaring in the trailer. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah. All right. So we could go on. I know you and we can talk about all the different stuff you guys did for the years that we were working together. But let's jump into why we're here and what we're talking about. And, there's a lot of people stressing out right now about what's going on. And what's interesting is I think always in this industry, there's I always call them kind of the haves and the have-nots. And you see people talking about sub-dollar rates, but then I also see a lot of people that are running off spot market that are getting, the $1.40, $1.50, $1.60 a mile rates. Nothing necessarily special, but it's not the bloodshed levels that a lot of people are talking about. So there's ways to do this, and I want to talk with you a little bit about what you guys are doing and some of the recommendations you would have for people as they're looking to capitalize on things.
Yeah, that's actually, there are a lot of tools, there's a lot of data, and one of the things, I actually have access to a lot of data. And just because I'm not in the truck, man, I'm laying, I cannot tell you how many times I've laid in bed at 3:00 in the morning, thinking about what we're going to do with this truck or that truck today, kind of a thing. And so one of the things that we work really hard at is having a plan. Monday morning, I'm thinking about where this truck's going to be on Friday. Today was a great example. Here it is Thursday, and we've got a truck. We've got a truck in Midway, Tennessee, right up near kind of near Knoxville, and so the thought is, where do we want to move him today, so that the weekend, because he's staying out. The guy's based in Houston. He's going to stay out over the weekend. So the goal here is to maximize the revenue over the weekend. Now, are we going to get a kick-ass, awesome load on a Friday in this market? Probably not. But I've got to put revenue on the truck. And so I don't want to have him in some place where he can't run 600, 700, 800 miles for Monday morning. He can get the goal here is that tomorrow morning he picks up a load and runs 600 miles, shuts down on Saturday night. Depending on where he is with hours, this guy needs a reset. So we want him to shut down by tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening, then near his delivery for Monday. Excuse me. So on Saturdays he can go 1,000 miles. That's what I'm trying to say. He can do 1,000 miles, picks up on Friday morning, and shut down on Saturday night near his delivery. And on Monday morning he's got his reset in. He can make his delivery, and he's got $1,600, $1,700, $1,800 in the bank on Monday morning instead of sitting for the weekend, or taking a $500 load today that delivers on Monday. On Friday it delivers on Monday. Well, it's about planning ahead. We use we use DAT. Obviously, we've got DAT. We've got Truck Stop. We subscribe to Sonar. Look at a lot of data, and it depends on the kind of trucks. I've got flatbeds, we've got hot shots, we've got reefers, we've got dry van, the hot shots are always a challenge because there's that, especially for me, because I'm a data guy, and there's no specialized data set for hot shots. There's flatbed, there's open deck freight I can look at, and it gives me an idea of how many loads there are and what kind of market, what the market's looking like, but that doesn't specify out hot shot loads. It's partials basically. Or sometimes they need a dedicated truck and it's a 40-foot load and they don't want it on a flatbed. They're trying to save money, but those guys can be a little more difficult. So it's just thinking about, what kind of equipment. One of the things, I use that a lot. They've just updated, it used to be their hot market map. Now it's market conditions. And I really like what they've done with it. It is yesterday's data, or it's the last business day's data. So Monday morning, you're looking at Friday. And so that's really, that's the toughest day, because it's not really indicative at all of what you're working with a lot of times. But it's not, I wouldn't say it's not accurate. It's skewed, because when you look at load to truck ratios, and that's what I'm looking at there, is where, kind of trying to see, and I'm using this with Sonar in conjunction with other tools. But when I'm looking at it, it's telling me, how many loads were posted and how many trucks were posted. A lot of drivers don't post their trucks because they don't want to deal with all these crappy loads being called. And I get that, 100% get that. But also, there's a lot of brokers who will post the same load 10, 15, 20 times. You probably know who they are. And so the data isn't necessarily 100% accurate, but it is representative because it's inaccurate across the board. So when I'm looking at Memphis and I'm looking at the load to truck ratio in Memphis, and I'm looking at the load to truck ratio in Atlanta, it may not be accurate, but it is representative.
Right. And on that, we used to tell people is it's the numbers. You could have a certain ratio, but if you got 112 trucks and 312 loads, 5 trucks can swing that ratio pretty quickly. But if you're sitting in the thousands, now it's, now you're not too worried about did somebody post their truck 20 times with 20 different lanes that they're trying to price out, because it's going to level itself out. Exactly. Not to mention over time, watching that over time to know that Atlanta sits at an average market at a 4 loads to truck ratio is you want to say almost equilibrium. But when you start to see that jump up over the 5 and 6, typically you start to know it's moving in the carrier's favor.
Yeah, and when we drove a team, my wife and I drove a team. We live in Chattanooga, so I would do a search on Truck Stop within a 150-mile radius of Chattanooga. And I would do it whether we were in Chattanooga. I would check that every day, whether we were at home or not. I could be in Seattle or LA, and I'd still check my Chattanooga search every day because I wanted to know how many loads were posted every day in that market, because it gave me a real, Atlanta being usually the #1 market in the country for freight. And within 150 miles of Chattanooga, you've got Knoxville, Nashville, Birmingham, and Atlanta. And so it's right this, and Chattanooga's right in the center of that wheel, which is one of the reasons grandkids is why we moved to Chattanooga. So
yeah.
So I always, even when we were home, my wife would get mad, and would get mad at me because I'm looking at load boards, and sometimes I was cheating and trying to go to work, but usually I was just doing research to find out, maybe do we want to come out this week, kind of a thing. And so I was always looking at the Atlanta market in particular to see how many loads were being posted, because that would give me a good indication of how strong the market was right now. The other thing we would do a lot using TruckStop, and I want to jump into TruckStop real quick. Is one thing we would do with TruckStop a lot is I would build searches. And of course, the problem with TruckStop is that if you click on a load in Laredo, the broker can see that you clicked on a load in Laredo and they think you got a truck in Laredo. Or maybe I'm looking at a load to Laredo and I'm seeing how much I can get coming out. So, you get a lot of calls sometimes on that. And I get less of that now. But certainly in this market, you get a lot less anyway. But one of the searches I would do on a regular basis with TruckStop is I would set up a team search for with no destination, and I'd put every state into the pickup. I really love this tool, and I wouldn't put a date, so it would show me every team load. I'll show you what you got. Something you got coming up.
Sorry about that. I want to show you something a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, but let me show you this here, because this is a search I still use because we run a number of teams.
Yeah. By the way, I want to jump in here, interrupt you. Just so you know, we're broadcasting to several different, to YouTube and to several different Facebook. So you may not see if you're looking at this, and we may talk to somebody's comment, you may not see the comments. So we'll try to post it up here, because you're only going to see comments. What am I trying to say? You can only see the comments
on the platform you're on
Facebook in the group that you're watching with it. So, so the question here, before I go too far, is can you call and still have that feature turned off? I remember we used to do that so we wouldn't get the phone calls. Do you know if that's still an option?
I don't know if it is, but I'll tell you, I didn't want that, because honestly, if I clicked on a load in Laredo and my phone blew up, I'm going to Laredo. Okay. Seriously, right? I'll take the load to Laredo. I now have my answer, and so, and that's a great indicator, so, we can always tell what the market, here in our office, we can always tell, because we post every truck every day, because it's our job to take those crappy calls. And so, when the phone is ringing and brokers are calling, we know that we're in a better, if a broker calls me, he's looking for a truck. If I call him, I'm looking for a load, and so I'm in a much better position if he needs a truck than if I need a load. So, we want them calling us, even though a lot of the calls. Yeah. So, anyways,
the technology that's out there now, and that's been improving, and this is something that I know, FreightWay or FreightWeb has been looking at, in terms of that there's the small carrier, the independent owner operator, is at a disadvantage from an information standpoint, and FreightWays themselves are also trying to level the playing field a little bit, but information and data pulled together, all of that can help you make decisions, even when you don't have a group of data scientists and a computer that's crunching numbers and pulling data in to try to price things out. So it's starting, it's those cues you talk about. It's if the phone starts blowing up because you clicked on Laredo, that okay, that load's pretty good. So what are some of, like with TruckStop, what are some of the other things that you take a look at?
I'm sharing my screen. I think you have to turn it on, don't you? Or is it showing? I don't know if it's showing or not. Yeah. This is the search I did, where I literally post where from every state to no state is how I do the search. And what it does is then I sort it by state of origin, where the load's originating. And so what it does is it tells me basically, this has been a great example. We were sitting here at home in Chattanooga, and I had this search going, and I saw a load tomorrow from Tulsa to Los Angeles that was paying, at the time, your average team load from Atlanta to Los Angeles was paying about $5,400, $5,500 at that time. This was a few years ago. And we'd die for that money today. But a load was posted from Tulsa tomorrow, team load, paying $5,700. It was like a 20,000 pound load. So I called and I booked the load. And then, and Ann says, well, we're in Chattanooga. And I said, yeah, but we can deadhead to Tulsa and pick that up if I can't find. So I found a solo load going to within 30 miles of Tulsa that we made, I think, $1,200 or $1,300 on. Maybe it's even more than that. But I remember it was pretty awesome, but we picked it up today, negotiated an early delivery, made that delivery the next morning, picked up the load in Tulsa. And so we ended up making an extra $1,300, $1,400, $1,500 going to LA, driving pretty much the same miles. I mean, we probably added 150 miles to our route. So, it's thinking outside of the box a little bit, that kind of thing. Truck Stop's throwing me because they moved stuff around on me today. Maybe I can fix that. But this week they moved the pricing to the left-hand side, and I'm not sure why. But so that's just a little tool I use on Truck Stop, especially for team loads. But again, it's kind of the same thing. If you can, and we use the alarms a lot. I tell our people here, if you set an alarm on Truck Stop or that, and that alarm goes off, and you're not immediately looking to see what the load is, you've got the alarm set wrong. Know what you're looking for, specify exactly what it is you're looking for, set a search for it. Maybe, you can do it by state or within 200 miles of a certain destination, whatever. Set a specific search that you want, set an alarm for it. When that alarm goes off, you instantly click on it. Because I'll have that happen. I'll hear an alarm going off and off and off across the room. And I'll say, what's that alarm for? And it says, oh, it's that truck. Well, I said, well, you're not even looking.
And right now, that's that's critical now, timing on things, and that's where sometimes the pro boards that update things quicker
instantly
can really help you out.
I mean, as a single truck operating, we paid the full price for the pro boards, because it was worth it. It made a huge difference. So
yeah, we used to always say, always have the two boards, right, and then have one version that's a pro. And we've seen this over the past years where, in both cases, Truck Stop and DAT have gone down, but you have one version that's a pro, and you can, if you find one load because of the pro features, it pays for the added expense to that. So it's pretty easy. Now, the comment here, as far as so much value in deadheading when you do it right. Yeah, I used to try to, it's really true. One of the things I try to instill upon people is you should be absolutely sick to your stomach at the idea of deadheading. It should make you physically ill to move that truck with no revenue, on you. However, if you have a plan and you know that there's a load on the other end, that's the reason you do it. So you're describing a reason right there, and then obviously able to make it work. But you see so many people that just, I don't like this rate. And they don't have a load on the other end. They don't have. It's not going to. It's not like if they were to take a load that they would miss that load tomorrow that they potentially may have. And it's especially right now, it's about cash flow. It is so much about cash flow, and to just light some dollar bills on on fire and throw them out the window as you're driving is not going to get you to the other end of this thing.
Well, and you start deadheading, and then the load pops up 150 miles behind you, going where you wanted to go. I mean, it happens. I have done, when we've deadheaded, we had a plan, always had a plan. We took a load to Denver as a team load to Denver that, again, it paid more to Denver from Atlanta than a load from Atlanta to LA. Quite a bit more, actually, at the time. Mm-hmm. And we dropped that load middle of the day. It was probably noon, 1 o'clock, and we didn't even. We looked at the load boards, but we actually within 15 minutes we were rolling empty to LA, because we knew when we took the load to Denver. We used to live in Colorado. We moved here from Colorado. We knew when we took the load to Denver what we were looking at. And it was going to be a 45,000 pound load of beer somewhere for 85 to 90 cents a mile, if you can get it. There were 300 trucks in Denver. There were 40 loads that day, that were on the spot market. So you can't dial the phone fast enough to get a cheap load. So instead of sitting there for 4 or 5 hours and agonizing over it, we were in Los Angeles the next morning to get a team load going east. And it was a good plan. It kept the revenue coming to the truck. And it really is about revenue per day. We talk about rate per mile a lot. It's always going to be a metric. It's always going to be a metric in this business. But it's really, I tell our truck drivers, I know when we were driving the truck, our goal as a team was $2,000 a day in revenue on the truck. I'm not talking about profit. I'm talking about just revenue, gross revenue. And I knew that if I put $2,000 a day in revenue on the truck, I couldn't lose money. I'd be making a profit.
We talk about in the Trucking MBA as far as it's a math problem, right? It's you pretty much know as a solo driver, you can what it's going to cost you to drive 500 miles. If you say that's that's the maximum you're probably going to drive in a day, and it's pretty quick and easy math to say, oh, I got a 600-mile day, but on average you're going to probably be less than that, and and you're going to make money. So you figure out what the minimum daily gross revenue is to be profitable based on certain. You don't have to do math on rate per mile. All you have to do is, what was the number we used to use? What, 4,000? This is back in 2014. 4,000 gross a week, right? So that's 800 gross.
Hands. It depends on the equipment. There's a whole lot. It depends on your driver, man. It depends, because we have some drivers that are owner operators, some that are company drivers for some of the multiple trucks, and we have drivers we know we can count on. If they tell me I'm going to be there at 5 o'clock in the morning, I know when the broker calls, I don't have to even check with the driver. I know he's going to be there. He would have called me if he wasn't going to be there. We also have drivers who tell me they're going to be somewhere at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And at 10 o'clock this morning, they say, I'll be there by 3 p.m. This is a team truck, and then 3 hours later, I call them and says, oh, they're going to be 4 hours late. And there's no way for that to happen, right? There's just no way it happened. If we can't count on you to be where you say you're going to be, the revenue to the truck is going to drop drastically. It's going to drop drastically. I can't book loads until I know when you're going to be empty. So, great question asked, by the way. Somebody says, do you ever do a radius search? If so, how far, or do you always look everywhere? Oh, no, this is only for team trucks. It would be overwhelming if I tried to do it for solo because there's too many. But this is the only search I do it isn't a radius search. Usually, and it depends on the equipment, depends on the driver, depends on team or solo. A team truck, I'm going to do a radius search out further. I know that when we were driving, I would look out even 300 miles. I don't want to deadhead 300 miles, but for the right load, I would. Right. And I'm only looking for team. I'm not doing solo loads out 300 miles. I'm looking for team loads out 300 miles. And so
we're going to look at solo. Take an average market, not something that's between Denver and Kansas City or something. If you're sitting in Atlanta, how far out are you going to search?
Well, yeah. Well, for here, Chattanooga is a great example for me. I'm searching out 150 miles. And that's more than I really want to deadhead, but that covers 5 metropolitan areas for me. So that's and that's fairly unique, to be honest, unless you're up in the Northeast. That doesn't happen everywhere. If I was in Atlanta, I'd probably be searching out no more than 100 because honestly, shut time down. Because honestly, it always does that. If Atlanta, it's going to be overwhelmed if I'm looking out too far. There's going to be too many loads to look at. And if I can't find something in a 75-mile radius, it's probably a bad day for me, right, as a solo driver. And of course, for flatbeds or even a little less usually for me. Hot shots will expand. Hot shot drivers are more than willing. They just think it's cheap to drive their hot shot empty. To a large extent, it's not, but they're certainly more willing to deadhead to the load because it's harder to find a hot shot load in a lot of markets. Sometimes they just fall out of the tree. It's just crazy the loads you get, but sometimes it's quite hard.
So let's talk about technology and how you use the technology to try to figure out which markets to go to, because you can have 2 separate loads. I want to show something here, and I know you look at this sometimes too, but this is a new with Sonar, which what we're looking at here is we're looking at Dallas to Los Angeles, and so they've come up with a tool that is effectively telling you, so a 0 is 100% in the shipper's favor, 100 is 100% in the carrier's favor. So by putting in the city pairs, if let's say you're sitting in Dallas, you see a load to Los Angeles, and then we'll do Chattanooga since we're talking about it here, and we're seeing a load to Chattanooga. So basically what it's telling us is Chattanooga is a better market than Los Angeles was coming out of Dallas. So one of the reasons tools like this, especially this day and age, if you take a look at, I'm trying to remember as far as what quarter it was, but back in 2018, I think it might have been the fourth quarter or third quarter 2018, Knight Swift actually had their revenue was up, but their overall profitability was down, and it's because their utilization per truck was down. And what was happening is they were turning down loads and they were going into another market to get the higher rate per mile, so that the truck was actually generating less revenue and the utilization was down. So their profitability was down, even though it's one of the best markets out there. And, the realization everybody coming back and that especially the big guys know is that you got to keep, as you're saying, the revenue per day, keeping those trucks moving. So, looking at something like this from Sonar, and we're going to have these up on our website here shortly, so that you're not going to be able to see the rates, but you're going to be able to punch in city pairs and to try to get a gauge for what the markets look like for you. But being able to do that, you're able to know that I have a better chance of getting a good load or getting a load going to Chattanooga versus Los Angeles. So, these are technology tools that are coming out there that are pretty easy. Not a lot of thought has to go into that, right? It's put the city pairs in, 55 is better than 46. I got a better chance in Chattanooga. Plus, it's nicer here.
It's not guaranteeing you a load, but it's all about it's the numbers. It's a numbers game without a doubt, and so and making sure you're looking at the right data. A good example, I was talking about you with this earlier, with Sonar. One of the things I look at, and I don't have to show it, but one of the things I look at on a regular basis for the flatbeds, open deck freight, whether it's flatbeds, hot shots, step decks, but open deck freight, I look at housing starts and the oil market, because those are going to be two real good indicators of where we're heading. Because my clients are always asking me where we're heading. And those are two real good indicators for me. And so in fact, I was telling Bill earlier, one of my clients is looking at, picking up 3 more trucks. It's a good time to buy a truck if you got cash, but it's a scary time to be adding to the fleet. But you're looking at trailers and you're saying, should I get into reefer and they're doing a couple of dry vans right now. But he said, should I get reefer or flatbeds? They've been looking at going flatbed. And I just said, man, right now, with where the oil markets are at and housing starts are plummeting, I'd be really careful unless you have dedicated freight that you're getting this equipment for. I'd be really careful picking up flatbeds right now. Anything, honestly. You got to know you're in a good spot. And he gets good drivers, and that's a big thing. It's hiring the right people, man. It's hiring the right. If you're not going to be driving the truck yourself, you got to get the right driver in the truck. You got to get somebody you can count on.
So what are some of the tricks you pull up as far as so we were just showing there as far as the markets. You've got 2 loads to pick from, and you're trying to determine which market. What are you looking at right now to say is LA or Chattanooga or Atlanta? Which one?
One of the things you're finding right now is that the markets that are really good, and Los Angeles right now is pretty dang good. However, it's really good on paper, I think, more than a reality, unless you're a reefer. South of Arizona is really good right now with a reefer, but getting there is the problem. You're going to just take it in the shorts to get there. And somebody on Facebook just said, "Data is an indicator, not a crystal ball." Excellent. That's exactly what we're saying. But you're going to South Florida, again, where, and I was telling you earlier, if you look at some of the data today and yesterday, there were so many loads for a reefer or even for a van out of the Miami market. However, and that's being driven by Mother's Day. So if you look at this data, you got to think about why is this market hot? Why is that a really good market right now? If I were to say, oh my God, I want to get to Miami and send my reefer team to Miami, today, and they get down there tomorrow afternoon. Well, guess what? All the flour loads are gone. And that's what, so they're shipping the flour loads up to Memphis, but FedEx is going to be shipping them all out across the country, and or Louisville, and so that's what's happening there. And so you got to think about, because the produce season this year is really, really muted because restaurants have been closed. The produce that's being grown in Florida and South Georgia is mostly for restaurants. It's really high quality produce. The stuff we're buying at the grocery stores is mostly coming from Mexico and South America. And those supply chains just can't switch gears. They can't just say, oh, well, let's instead go get everything out of Florida and sell that to Publix. It just doesn't work that way. So, so it's been a really weird year. So it's just, when I'm looking at where I want to go, every morning we have a team meeting. And I talk about where we want the trucks to go and what's off limits. It's really tempting, especially if you haven't been doing it long. You'll be sitting in Atlanta and somebody will call you with a load to Newark, New Jersey, and say, man, it's paying $2.30 a mile. Everybody else is, it's $1.40 is what I'm seeing out of Atlanta. And somehow there's a reason. You get to New Jersey and it's upside down. There's more trucks than loads. And that $2.40 a mile load just became $1.20 because you're turning around and it's a round trip. So it's still maybe as good as what you would have found out of Atlanta, but it's it's just beautiful. Or you'll sit there, and and I see guys on Facebook, you see them all the time bragging about I don't move for less than $2 a mile or whatever. Man, I've got to pay. You got bills to pay, and your insurance, your truck payment, those things. These expenses never stop. You have to have a minimum amount of revenue per day on average. And so if you don't move your truck today because the rates weren't good enough, those rates have to be better tomorrow than what you were looking for today. If you're saying I got to get $2 a mile when I move my truck, then tomorrow it's $2.10. And the day after that, it's $2.20 because your expenses keep accruing.
Put this in a more perspective. If you need $800 a day, you don't move a day. Now you need, for that week, you need to average $1,000 a day, right?
Every rest of the week.
Take a load for $600 to reposition. Now you only need $850 a day. So, the markets you're in, it's a lot easier to average $850 out over a period of time than it is to average $1,000 out.
And Bill, to be honest, that's kind of our target right now. That's a number I would never have said was my target. But in this market, talking to the owners of our trucks, I'm just saying, man, if we can put $800 to $1,000 a day on your truck as a solo driver, we'll survive this. You'll survive this. And that, they know what their expenses are. We've talked about, we go into depth with, where they need to be. But generally, I said, we're kind of treading water. What we don't do is we're not going to put off deferred maintenance. We're not going to look at it. You can generate positive cash flow and still be losing money. Right, because there's you have to buy tires this December. You've got oil changes, you got breakdowns. All these things happen, and if you're not counting those things into what it's costing you to run this week, you have no idea if you're profitable. You have no idea, and so you've got to know what your number is that you have to hit from a revenue basis, not a per mile. I got to put this much in. Obviously, fuel costs are going to fluctuate. Fuel rates, obviously, right now fuel is cheap, which is one of the things that's killing us. Because that's why the oil fields are dead. People always think cheap oil is awesome. It's horrible for trucking. It's horrible. It's under $2 a gallon in Spokane, Washington at truck stops for diesel today. It's just
we've got a partner that they just launched a new fuel program, and they're seeing in certain markets that like around $2 per mile, or $2 per mile, $2 per gallon would be the pump price, and they're getting $1.10. $1.10 a gallon on fuel. It's almost like you don't even consider the cost of fuel anymore in terms of where you're at there. So so now they're even the stations, and they've got the most aggressive fuel discount out there. So it's not fair to compare them to even some of the ones that people look at, but it's it's interesting as we talk to people, and you have to sit there and look at what you need to do to make sure you're still standing and you're in a good position on the other side of this, right? I always like to say on the other side. When do we start to see the light at the end of the tunnel? Trucking, fortunately, is going to be a leading indicator of the market when it starts to come back. So that you have the advantage there. You're going to be able to start to see some revenues, increased revenues before then. But you've got to look at, if you're saying you're going to lose money, you've got your variable costs, right? And then you've got a variable cost that's hard to do. So just say, hey, we're going to make sure that every day I need $110 or $100 or $150. It is my maintenance money, right? And then what does it cost me for fuel? What's it cost me for the driver? Now everything above and beyond that goes towards my fixed cost. Now that's not how you run your business, right? Overall, but right now it's cash flow. It's being able to, you got to take a look at it. And you see these guys that they're getting PPP loans, they're getting other stimulus money, they're getting deferrals on their truck payments, but they still want to calculate that cost into everything, and they'll sit and they'll shut down. And you're burning cash. And if you're burning cash, you're shortening how long you can survive in a market that's going to be difficult to turn a profit and cover all your expenses.
And I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have anything. I don't have it. Nobody has the answers. Anybody tells you they knows what's going to happen in 2 months, they're lying. But I have feelings about it. I mean, I look at a lot of data. I do believe, if I'm not going to get into the politics of it at all. We can do that, but honestly, if I really feel that by midsummer, if you can make it to the end of June, if you can make it and not be in trouble, and it's not, it's one thing, don't bury yourself, right? But if you can make it by to the end of June, I think you're going to be fine. I think it's going to work out. We were on pace for an unbelievable year until mid-February. We were on, it was, every indicator was saying we were just going to have a kick butt year. Seriously. And then housing starts did this, and it's crazy what's happened, how fast it turned bad. But I really do believe it's not going to be a kick-ass year, but I think it's going to be a good second half. I think it's going to be a good second half. Killing me.
My crystal ball's broken, and my crystal ball repair guy is not an essential service, so he had to shut down. So you're right, it's hard. But in any business, you can't even. I tend to agree. I think third quarter we're going to start to see, especially in the transportation, we're going to start to see some things break loose, and fourth quarter will probably be a little more. Now, a lot of that I think in transportation is also going to be what's happening with stimulus, because they talk about the unemployment numbers, but we all know that there are a lot of people making more on unemployment than they made when they were employed, and they're spending their money. Take a look at we'll see. Wait till some of these retailers that have a online presence are showing their second quarter numbers, and I think we're going to be surprised. I see big screen TVs. I got a Best Buy down the road. I see the big screen TVs getting loaded into the back of cars over there. So people are spending their money right now, which is it's good for the economy. We need to see that, but we'll see what's happening with the stimulus. Because if that's the case, people are going to be spending money in Q4, and that's going to be good news for the transportation industry.
There's been so much money shoveled out, honestly, and it's going to be interesting to see whether it's enough, whether it's too much. I think the debt is staggering. It's staggering. We're definitely piling on, but I think that if people can come out of this and then go back to work, if they'll go back to work, we were out at a restaurant. We've opened up restaurants here, some of them in Chattanooga, and we went out for Mexican food on Tuesday night. And it was a nightmare because they don't have any, their employees won't come back to work because they're making so much money on unemployment. The line was out the door. It was crazy. And they're only at half capacity, and so, I don't know. I will see what happens. But and it's been scary what we're seeing right now. But I think we're going to, if we get in the middle of summer, by then, I think some capacity will be gone from the market. We were overcapacity. We had too many trucks. And there's going to be, I think, especially some mid-sized fleets that are just going to be so over-leveraged, they're not going to be able to survive this. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. There's a lot of people. There's interesting, as we're wrapping up here, we talk about rates as far as where people are at with some of these things. There was a comment somebody made that said, 2019, the rates were just horrible. And who could have ever predicted that we would have saw rates that low? Talking about the 2019 rates. And I'm like, we're right now, as we're at, what we're seeing with rates are matching 2016. Who could have predicted 2019? Anybody who looked at history over the past 5 years could have told you we're going to see those rates again. And there's a lot of those carriers that don't look at that. They jumped in 2018, or worse, they came in and they kept spending their money and they kept expanding. And they don't have the ability to sustain where they're at right now.
I know you're wrapping up
quarterly numbers.
Let me jump in with one thing, because this is honestly, if I have any advice, because when you're dealing with brokers, especially in the spot market, this is one thing that I definitely want to get this across. When the broker, because you'll see a lot of these guys want you to give them a price. They know what they're willing to pay. I make them give me a price, because I said, they say, well, what do you need? I said, well, no, you tell me what you can pay. I'll tell you whether we can even negotiate, right? But they'll say all kinds of things. Well, this is what I have in it. I've got $1,413 in the load. Can you take $1,390 so I can make $23? They'll say stuff like that to you all the time, right? Get it all the time.
Right.
Give them, they're lying to you usually. I'm not bashing brokers. It's part of sales, right? And I'm not saying they've got $3,000 in the load. I'm saying they don't have 14, 9, 13. I mean, so I tell my people here, give them a chance. Don't say screw you and hang up the phone. Give them a chance to back out of their lie, right? Give them a reason to say yes to you. So, man, I understand. I know that hurt.
Let me go check with my boss.
Yeah. I can say that the worst thing that can happen when I call the broker, and it happened all the time. I call a broker and say, what do you need? And I give them a rate and they say, okay. No, don't ever just say okay to me. Even if that's $300 less than you were willing to pay or thought you were going to have to pay, say, oh my God, let me go. Maybe you own the company. Say you got to check with your boss. Make me feel good about the rate I got. Okay, just say, put me on hold for 30 seconds and twiddle your thumbs and come back and say, okay, I guess we'll do it. Because now I feel like I got every penny I could, right? And it works both ways.
Yeah. Gary, it's interesting because what we do here in terms of compliance and safety, we work with a lot of carriers as far as getting things started. And we have been busier last month and the beginning this month with new authorities than we've been the whole year. And I joke and I say, it's the Trump money. People are getting their stimulus money and they want to start it. But reality is you have people, you have people who are, they're out there, they're booking their own freight. They are, they're seeing the rates. They're not making as much money. They're paying. They're probably one of these scenarios where they're paying for the insurance as it is. And they're like, well, if I'm going to do this, I may as well do it on my own. I'm not really getting anything special right now. So you have that. The other thing, which is very interesting, which everybody needs to understand is I probably have half the people that are calling me. It's because they're working for somebody else, but they found a direct account. And so what they're saying is, one guy is talking about a 1.5 mile shuttle, 2 trucks that they're just going to do in a 1.5 mile shuttle. These are people that are out there bringing in as far as the business out there. So is it the right time or is it the wrong time? I tend to personally think down markets are always the best time to get into a business if you can build a business plan around where the market is. If you can do that, you are going to be in great shape as long as you stay disciplined on it.
You've seen lots of people build a business plan around the best rates ever, right? It's one of the worst things you can possibly do. Oh my God, we'll get this forever. And it just, you won't. Or even a dedicated client. You won't keep a dedicated client, you won't keep a dedicated client forever either, most likely. Right. So it can't be your plan. And because if 70% of your revenue is coming from one guy, what happens when that one guy leaves you? Right. So it may be an awesome account, but you can't build a business model around it. So.
But I'll tell you what, here's what I firmly believe. Somebody who's an independent owner operator who has the ability to go out and get a single account, that's the type of person when they lose, because they're not going to, most of their revenue is going to come from one account. That's just the nature of that business. But they're the person that has the ability and the desire and the discipline that if they lose that account, they're going to go out and they're going to find another one. Versus the guy today talking about, hey, you know what? I lost, he's figuring out what he's being cheated from brokers, and he worked out the numbers to it's about $70,000 a year that he's losing to brokers. At what point is it so painful, if you truly believe that number, that it's so painful that you will pick up the phone and you'll start prospecting, even if it's 5 calls a day, to find an account so that you're not being ripped off by brokers? That's the piece that is just absolutely mind-boggling out there. And if we're talking, I believe we're talking about this market, we're looking what to do. I strongly believe this is probably one of the best markets for a small carrier to get out there and find dedicated freight. I mean, it's just there's shifts going on in the market. When you got somebody who's only shipping 20% of the freight that they normally do, they've got time. They got time, even though they don't, they're getting bombarded by brokers. They've got time out there. So it's you got to do it, and there's no wrong time or right time. I don't believe. I mean, I just think it's just do it, right? You got to get out there and do it, to borrow a phrase from some big mega company. Well, listen, we're coming up on the hour mark. Thank you, Craig. Is there any short last minute words that you want to?
No, really. I think that, I'm not afraid of this market. It was, my God, when everything crashed in like a 3-day period, really, it was like a 3-day period. We looked, my wife and I looked at each other and said, I don't even know what to tell our people. We were kind of bewildered by it as much as everybody else. So I think that, we actually shut down all the trucks for a week. I tell you, the first couple of weeks, I just said, guys, let's get the trucks home. Right now you're running for fuel money and you're crazy to be beating up your equipment for $1.20 a mile. So I'm seeing volumes increasing across the board pretty much. I do feel like, like our people are going to make it. And I think that, and I do, one of the things, be careful of, when you have a new authority, sometimes it's tough to get direct freight, unless you're dealing with small guys around you. If you can build a relationship that, hey, I'm just down the street, I'm, that kind of thing. Those are the guys, somebody who's shipping 2, 3, 4 loads a week and you want their business. And then maybe that's a good prospect or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. If you want the whole story on the Tiger King, by the way, it's on our blog. So if you want we actually had a blog back. I have it all. So it's
Craig Leonard, right? Leonard.com or what's
Anthony and Craig Leonard.com is our blog. And we type somebody can type it up. I don't know. But it's so the whole story's there and a whole bunch of pictures and videos and stuff. But it was quite fun.
Yeah. So real quick, Gary, as we're wrapping up here, this will be, you can go back, you can watch the whole thing from on Facebook at the VLocity Group. Also, it'll be in the Freight Mastermind group on Facebook, as well as on the TruckingMBA on YouTube. So be able to do that. Real quick on you as far as the dealing with new MCs. Yes, there are brokers out there that, they're 30 days, 60, 90, they're out there. Craig has a great list as far as brokers that will work with you early on. And stay tuned for Freight Webs, because we're going to be reaching out to every broker out there in the industry and trying to build a mega list out there, and also a few other things coming on. There we go. Thank you, VLocity Group, for getting that posted up there. Everyone, Gary, every week at Thursday at 5 o'clock, we're going to be on. Next week, we are going to have Craig 2.0, Craig Bliss. Craig has been on the brokerage side of the game, and he's got quite a bit of information, and he runs a pretty successful Facebook group as well, and has some great shows out there. So looking forward to having him on. And in future shows, we're going to do a little more about what's going on with Freight Webs and some of the tools you can have out there, especially when we get ready to launch our Freight Webs component. So thank you, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.